Hi, Mike.
Hi there.
How you doing?
Good. We are live, just so you know.
Okay.
Through.
Just coming in hot, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
We'll get underway officially at 8 o'clock sharp.
Sounds good. I just wanted to make sure my connection was good from here, and it
Solid.
seems to be fine, so that's good.
We're fortunate to have fiber here in South Minneapolis.
Yeah. Yeah, we had fiber light. So we got onto USI Wireless early on. The city provided Wi-Fi, and it was so cheap for so long because I think we were in the first batch of residents, and it was the Wi-Fi signals from the nodes around town kind of came and went, but once they put the fiber in, it's been
It
great.
was solid, huh? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's amazing. We went up to Madeline Island, which is that uh, spot. You take a ferry out into Lake
Right,
Superior from
right.
northern Wisconsin, and it was wonderful. And during COVID, they're like, if we're going to survive up here, we have to have solid internet during
Right.
the pandemic, and so they installed fiber up there.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works, but it was great. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
worked up there for a week, 2 summers
Mhm.
in a row.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very nice.
Yeah, we went then the week you were coming back, we went up to the Boundary Waters, and we went with friends, and they brought their phones in with them because that was their camera. And we left our phones in the car. And I have to say, they got they got a little bit of connectivity up there. So they were like checking the weather and responding to texts. And I thought, no, I want my BWCA experience to be gone, gone. This
Gone. Yeah,
interconnectedness is great, but sometimes you want to get away, and it's harder and harder to do that,
yeah.
you know.
It's amazing. It was I was reading an article on the NPR website this morning about the immigrants crossing at Eagle Pass across the Rio
Mhm.
Grande, and using Google Maps to get there.
Oh,
Through
sure. Yeah.
from Venezuela to
Yeah.
Eagle Pass. Through the rainforest and all of this. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Where I don't know. And they have a plastic bag covering a change of clothes and their phone.
And the phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, talking about phones really got me. Um, what got me thinking about it even more was our discussion last week with Michelle from the Public
Yeah.
Defender's Office about how when you lose your phone, you're really you've lost a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the number of times I lose my keys, I don't know if it's a matter of age or what, but but the phone is never, I just never. Sometimes I do have the watch. Sometimes it's like, which seat cushion is it buried in? I have
Right.
that experience. but
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I never. It's so essential.
Right. Yeah.
So you can see the screen, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So I just brought up the articles from blanking on her
Oh,
name.
yeah.
Julie
Jean
uh,
O'Grady.
O'Grady. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you. Gene O'Grady.
Oh, there it is. I promise I didn't read it. I talked with her
No, I know. Yeah.
this past summer. She gave a really nice presentation on doing things like this webcast and
Oh, did she?
blogging and things like that on the part of law librarians and how it can, benefit you. And yeah.
She's very nice. I met her while ago now at double A double L some time
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. She was saying, she's a firm librarian. So she said at first she was kind of doing it under the radar because the firm wasn't entirely sure if like the kind of publicity she would generate would be helpful. And
Yeah.
so she said she just kind of did it. And then she started getting quoted, and she said, now the firm is all about, hey,
Yeah.
She works for us. But she said it benefits the firm because she reports on new tech, so she gets advanced looks at a lot of products.
Yeah.
You know.
Which will be a short topic of conversation, our topic for today, I think.
Yeah.
Dino Grady, Bob Ambrogi.
Bob Ambrogi, the other big name. Yeah.
I saw this attorney at work post too. I don't know.
Oh,
They got a sneak peek or not. What was the date of this post, actually? I was kind of wondering. Joan, attorney at work.
huh. Not
Wait,
familiar
wait.
with her.
So I brought up those articles. I've got Westlaw Edge. I thought maybe we could play a little stump the chump with your question this week.
Yeah.
We do that live.
When we'll see.
I did give it a quick go, for what it's worth. And
Yep. Did you find it right away?
I did. And we can talk about how I found it.
Yeah, I think that'll be really interesting because it took me a minute. Of course, I think if you know there's a trick to it when you start out, it gives you a little bit of an advantage.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
when you're just like, well, okay, and you search it, and then you think, wait a minute, what's the trick here?
Yeah, I love that question this week. It's so common. I don't so many times I've gotten a question, but we'll save that for the next 7 minutes for.
Yeah, right, yeah, and I'll share a little public library experience with that kind of too, because it's not just law, not just legal research where it comes up.
Oh, really? Yeah. I'm trying to think if I've ever had that kind of issue. I don't ever, remember having a case be lodged in my mind like that, to the extent that I'd have to say, oh, wasn't there? I suppose if you're in practice for a while, those things will trigger. Even a random case alert will land as something that you'll remember.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's as much that way now, but certainly for older attorneys really established in their field, they've always relied on whatever handful of cases in that area of law, and then they remember seeing something kind of related, come through like little paragraphs in Bench and Bar magazine or some other kind of newslettery thing, and then they're continually like, I think it was just 6 months ago. And I'm like, but it wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, years, right? It's never. We always get an early start on the program. It's never the car was. It was a blue turnip truck. It was not a red sports car. It was all the facts. The date 10 years ago, not last month. It's never ever the same.
It's interesting to me how the mind works. When I was in my brief life in practice, of course, the associates get all the more onerous, difficult kinds of questions. So I remember searching for, a case that stood for some proposition and doing an initial search and seeing a few results and thinking, they're okay, but I bet I can do better. And then doing that thing where you sort of spin off and pretty soon you're miles away from where you started. And then I thought, I think that first case I found that was more on point than I realized. And I had filled in all kinds of gaps in my mind that weren't there. I went back to the case. It wasn't at all what I remembered it being. The details were different. The law was different. I just wanted it to be the good answer, I guess. And
well, and I've often come across a situation where it's like, oh, that's irrelevant. And then seeing it again, I'm like, oh, why do I keep seeing that? And I see it again, I'm like, wait a minute.
Maybe there's something here. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I understand there are limitations to keywords here, but this one still keeps appearing based on some logic that I've got. Maybe I should take a closer look.
Right. And we do. I mean, that's a classic thing we tell first-year law students is, when they say, how do I know when I'm done? You're like, when you keep seeing the same set of cases over and over, take a hard look at those and and maybe you're done.
Yeah. And I think, people think about these databases as if they have everything, and that case law is just endless, data, and it's just not. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
there's a lot of cases out there, but the chances of missing something, I think, are less than most people think.
Right. And less than they used to be. Of course, I also used to warn the students, of course, if you're doing a terrible search and you keep coming up with the same cases, you might have a different problem. So don't rely just on that.
Really encouraging. Yeah. Bringing them into the safe zone there, Karen.
That's right.
I'll start the record here locally here too. Belt and suspenders.
That's right. You saying belts and suspenders makes me wonder, is that really a legal phrase? I'm always telling people in my life, as lawyers always say, belts and suspenders.
Yeah.
And then I just thought the other day, I wonder if it's only lawyers who say that, or is that a common term in other people's lives?
Let's see. We'll start that off with think we topped 10,000. No, only 1,000 cases.
Wow. So it's apparently a very rare.
Yeah.
Right.
1,500 secondary sources, plenty of briefs.
Okay. Do you think there's a law review article that has belts and suspenders in the title? I'm guessing yes.
I think we saw a couple pop up there as we were typing.
Oh, yeah. I can't see the details of your screen very well. I'm on my laptop today.
Yeah, okay. I hope our viewers can see it a little closer.
Oh, probably.
16 secondary sources.
Yeah.
Looks like mostly law review articles.
Sure.
Texas Practice Guide.
Huh.
Patreon copyright.
Yep, a belt and suspenders approach.
Our stream strength here. I think I have in my history the litigation analytics on
Judge Deary.
On Judge Deary. Here's one I must have misheard this one. On I sometimes go to sleep at night listening to cable news just droning on in the background. And one of the things I heard the other day was, not many people have heard this term, but the phrase that's relevant here is something called embaglement. And I must have been I don't know. I spelled this a number of different ways. I Googled it. I find nothing on the term. So yeah, it's just kind of a funny one. But this Deary.
Did you ever figure out what it was?
No, I have no idea. I kind of heard him explain it related to embezzlement, and when I Googled it, embezzlement is what came up. But yeah. I don't know what the
people inveigle, don't they? I wonder what that.
Do they?
INVEIGLE.
Oh,
I don't know what
how
it
do you spell it?
means. INVEIGLE. I think.
Oh.
Is that a term?
But
I've never heard of it.
I'm sorry, inveigle.
GLE.
Oh. Embaglement. I didn't hear the misplaced the V for B. Okay, all right. So we're after the top of the hour, but now we're gonna start with let's do one of these. Embaglement.
Oh,
Did I spell it incorrectly? Invagil.
EIGL.
Invagel. Oh. EIG.
Yeah,
I know you've told me 4 times.
that's okay. Huh.
There's a statute. California Penal Code, handful of secondary sources. Well, that makes me, that's that is funny. That is
Not a
funny.
common
That's
word.
great. Wow, Karen, you're amazing. I can't believe that's great. That's also hilarious. Embarrassed to say that. Excellent. All right. Well, welcome. It is 8:02 Friday morning. Welcome. I'm Mike, researcher at Gray Paper Legal.
I'm Karen, director of the Hennepin County Law Library.
We're here to chat about the most interesting legal research questions of the week. We've got a couple coming down. Karen, what was your most interesting legal research question of the week?
Well, I'm not sure if it was the most interesting, although it was interesting. I would say it's a very common thing that we get in research. And I thought people might want to know what folks who research a lot do when they get a request to find a particular item, but we don't have all the proper clues to find it. So I had someone call a fairly recent law school graduate trying to find a federal case with someone named Jamal Williams as the defendant, and he knew the date of birth of the defendant, which I couldn't really put to use in any effective way, and he also knew that he was a defendant on fraud and identity theft charges. So that's what he had. He knew it was federal. He didn't know what federal jurisdictions. And so, Mike, when you hear someone wants to find Jamal Williams somewhere in the country, what's your first thought? I'm wondering if it was the same as mine.
Well, so a couple of tips there. One is looking for something very specific. But I'm always thinking to start broad, right? If I can search everything first, because memories are, as we were just talking about, this question is so common. It's, and the facts that they think they know about the case are completely incorrect. The other thing is that I didn't think of before, but now that you're just retelling this, is the fact that this is probably coming third hand. So there's a game of telephone going on here, probably between the partner, the associate, the parallel, whoever it might be. Right. So we're missing or have misinformation.
Well, yep. My first thought was, oh no, Williams. Like, give me a good obscure name and Bob's your uncle, but give me Jamal Williams, and I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to do with that.
Fairly common name, even, especially for something like if we're looking for dockets. Now, were they looking, when they said they're looking for a case, were they looking for the docket, the registrar, or the
So this young attorney was confident in his ability to find the case if he could just get the case number, and then I think he was going to explore within the docket. He didn't need me to pull a docket for him or anything. He just wanted me to find the case number, the docketing number. Oh, I missed one important piece which helped me confirm this when I found it, and that's that this person's middle name was not common. It was Ronta, Ronta.
That's helpful, because I think in the docket you're more likely to find the middle name too, right? Dockets index. I always do this differently. I'm so old. I still do the old database identifiers. But this is definitely something I begin in all dockets, and then probably in dockets, I do a party name search.
Yep.
And you know my memory for spelling from our Embaglement.
Yeah.
What was the middle name spelling?
Ronta, Ronta.
I think that's probably where I'd start.
Yep.
And I'm in all dockets. And we have some unique names, and we get 3 results.
Yep.
2011, 2002, and another 2011. These are all Minnesota state cases.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
bummer. Didn't find a federal one. So that's interesting to me, because when I went in, I believed my questioner, which Mike knows is not always reliable. So I didn't look in state dockets. I limited my universe to federal dockets, and it was not coming up with this. And I thought about trying just Ronta Williams, but I didn't know if the middle name would be in there. So I tried some variations there, and I wasn't really coming up with much. And then I thought I would try just the first initial J, because really, even though he spelled out Jamal for me, I thought, well, maybe there's some variation. But that was just a disaster, because think about how many J. Williams are in federal dockets. It was just ridiculous. So I thought on it a bit, which, Mike, I know you have a history as a West reference attorney. You didn't have this luxury. I said to this patron, you know what, let me think on it. I'll call you in the morning if I come up with anything else. So the next morning, I decided I would just do some Google searching for a Jamal Ronta Williams, and, identity theft and fraud, and just sort of cast a wide net. And I found a press release from Federal District Court in Minnesota. And I think it listed so many names that it listed a Jamal, Jamal, someone else, but it also listed our person, who in federal court spelled his first name Jemal. And so then it came up, it was clear that was the case. It was Jamal Ronta Williams. The charges seemed correct. And, I sent it off, and it was a big success. But that got me thinking, like, what are the common things when someone is looking for? Usually it's something they remember. And one common problem is with names. Names are spelled in an unconventional way. Names get inverted, especially with Asian names, I've noticed. So people don't know if if Yang is the surname or Lee is the surname. Mm-hmm. There are many, many spellings of Muhammad, for instance, which you'll see if you go into the Minnesota State Court docket and you ever search for the name Muhammad. You just find so many different spellings of it. So that's one piece. The other thing Mike and I were talking about is time. A lot of times folks will say, you know what, I saw this article, mention this case. I think it came out probably about 6 months ago. Always, as a researcher, you double the time right off the bat and then keep expanding it. Things are almost invariably further ago than people think they were.
The other strategy that I've used, which is not as helpful in this case, this is nice because, in one sense, because it's the document. It's what you need. There is a unique item that you're after, and often, if I get the chance, I'll say, and it's often a case. They'll say, it was a blue van, and the holding was such and such, and it was 5 years ago, and I really want to find that case. And so, if you get the chance, it's kind of nice to ask, well, why do you want to find that case? Right now, looking for Jamal Williams docket, that's a very unique. That's not that we're not looking for a legal principle there. We're looking for the actual item.
Right.
But if you are more likely to back into the case by searching the legal principle when you're looking for the case, rather than just looking for the case, because all of that information, as we say, it's memory is unreliable, and you're playing phone or a game of messenger typically, and it's hard to gather all of that information. The Google search is, more likely to give you the clue that you need than anything else. But if you can ask, why do you need that case? I think it's like, I don't walk into my doctor's office and say, give me Vicodin.
Right.
The doctor says, why do you want Vicodin?
Right.
And I think, oftentimes because it's spot on for a legal principle that they want to cite as authority, and it's nicer to have that conversation than to challenge the memory of your patron or
Right. Yeah. Yep. That's right. But I think the other, maybe the other takeaway is to, keep poking at it, chip away at a question like that. If someone's convinced there is a particular thing, any of those elements might be just slightly off, and just trying to change them. As a matter of fact, just before we went live, Mike and I were talking about a word he was Googling because he'd never heard the word before. And in that case, it was a matter of mishearing one letter in that word, right?
Well, it was more than that. I mean, as I was saying, I was dozing off while I was like, did he say embaglement? I've never heard of that. No.
Inveigle sounds like a more interesting crime.
Karen putting her liberal arts background to work here with embaglement was the word, and that turns out to be a legal principle, actually. That was a good one.
Maybe this webcast can just resurrect, obscure legal terms.
Yeah, for sure. The other interesting legal news this week, and I guess the question is, what do you think about the Westlaw Precision? 2 weeks ago now, Westlaw announced its new product. I think one of the complaints is Westlaw doesn't just make improvements to its existing product every 4 or so years. It launches what they call a brand new product, for which you have to pay, X number of extra dollars if you want it. And so 2 weeks ago, they upgraded from Westlaw Edge to what they are calling Westlaw Precision. And Karen, have you had a chance to take a look at the product at all, or
I haven't. I'm signed up for a little training orientation next week, and then I'll get my trial password at that time. Well, I'm wondering, Mike, with how they release these products, the Hennepin County Law Library never adopted Edge. I saw some interesting advancements in Edge, but I just didn't think it was enough to warrant paying more for the use I thought it would get by our attorneys. So now with Precision, do you know if this just is in place of Edge? Will Edge still be an option? Or does Precision include all of the Edge enhancements plus more?
That's correct. So that when you purchase Precision, you'll get everything that you got with Edge. And again, I don't know if it's worth the extra spend as well yet. I mean, with Westlaw Edge, the additions you got, actually these came a little bit later, was Quick Check and Litigation Analytics was kind of the new things. And for those, I'm like, yes, I want that. I think that's a valuable new tool. I like litigation analytics, especially. I think that's valuable. I want to add it. So for me, it's worth the additional spend. With what you get with Westlaw Precision, with their new features, I'm kind of on the fence. If I'm going to spend a little more, I might want to add in some of the valued secondary sources. Not, it means you'll see less of me at your place because I'll have. But I don't know if I'd want to add it in. And just a quick review of the new items. This precision search. I can show you. So the deal here is that they hired 250 new attorney editors, and they marked up their documents in certain practice areas the same way they do with the key number system, which I thought was an interesting play. So what that means is if there's a little demo on Westlaw, I don't know if this is on Next, but it's on Edge, where you can begin searching by specific attributes. So the area of law, they give you federal civil procedure. I think there are 8 areas of law that you can search right now, with more being added over the next few months. Then you can do the legal issue, specific cause of action, motion type. You can add in here, I don't know, motion. Let's do a frivolous motion. And I can view one case. So the pool is not, but I can add in other party types, material facts as well. And they're coded by and to get these kinds of results, which I think is pretty cool. What I like about it is that Westlaw is leaning into what we know they're good at, right? For decades, people like Dan Katz have been talking about how, the next evolution is going to be machine and human.
Right.
That's best for the complexity that of the law. And so I'm like, that kind of makes sense. And to get these kinds of it is a much more efficient process to get this kind of result, cause of action, motion type, all of that is a part of your research result, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I just feel like that will be so helpful for researchers.
There are other things that I think that could have come along a while ago too. Simple things like this new flag, the striped red flag. I have to say, there are a lot of attorneys who mistake the red flag. I've talked to a lot. Well, that's got a red flag on it. I can't use that case.
Yep, they won't even look at it. Yep,
they won't even look at it. And we forget and you wrote a whole paper, didn't you, Karen, on the
right, on kind of the problems with citations. Yeah, citators. Yep.
And this one just points out the obvious that and I'm also wondering how many cases will ever have a red flag anymore, because everything is almost always overruled in part. There will be some. I
thought I read they said something like if it's vacated, it will get a red flag.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, completely vacated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. I feel like almost every case has multiple issues at play, and the court's often just, ruling on 1 or 2 of them, not all of them. So, yeah.
And this tool will show you which head notes are relevant, which ones have been. So that's nice. You can do that manually on Westlaw now, but that's kind of a nice new feature to get you right to the. I
think so. That to just push that up to the top. I also like the key sites cited with, as long as your other cases and attorneys are doing a good job. Cases don't always directly cite each other, and up to now, we've been pretty limited to mostly just those direct references. So this seems like a machine learning piece, right? Where it's looking at the cases and saying, oh, look, when this case is cited, usually these other ones are cited as well.
Yeah. And I think you get some of that with Quick Check right now. If you run your brief through the Quick Check service, you'll get here are other cases you may consider. And I think that's the same.
Probably the same technology, but you don't get that in a KeyCite report currently. Yeah. So I think that'll really be helpful, especially folks writing their first, number of briefs and memos and so forth.
Yeah.
While you're getting your legs under you.
Somebody with a graphical view of his. I first looked at this and like, why do you need a graphical representation of your? But then. Have you ever tried to use your history and you scroll through it? It's like, which one? What was the one? Where is that one? Yeah. And this graphical view highlights the ones you spent more time on. So the size has to do with how long you've been viewing or interacting with the document. I have a question. What if I go away for lunch? Do I get a huge box here because I left my screen open and I left? I don't know.
You might, and then you'll be like, oh yeah. That was a long lunch. That was a long lunch. I think that will be super helpful for folks in practice, because you're often, in a library setting, I have the luxury of just devoting time to one or two questions at a time, and then I dispense with them. But when you're in practice, you're working one afternoon on something, and then you get called away to work on something else. And when you go back a couple days later, it's just hard to remember, like you were saying, in that list of history, like, what was I doing? Which one of these was the one that looked good? But if you can see that graphical history, you can watch how you moved through and where you spent your time. So I think that'll be really helpful in practice.
I think the workaround for that, not to discourage folks from bringing a new product, you highlight, you can you can annotate your documents here. You can highlight, you can add a note
as you go along. Yeah.
This is a
and
note.
then you can just pull
that.
from your history and see what you've
Yeah.
done. Yeah. I think it's interesting though, Mike, because it kind of goes to people's learning styles. I'm a very word-oriented person. I'm not great with numbers. I'm not artistic, but I think there are a lot of people who want to see like a graphical representation of something, and it locks in. Similar to how I think Lexis does those bar charts, in citation that shows, how often things were cited, and you get all these different representations that I think appeal to different learning styles.
Yeah, and it's I don't know how many people are actually annotating their documents.
Right.
That they may have learned that that's not a common thing to do. And do you fight the tide and try to encourage users to use the product that was designed,
right,
or to
right.
just say, hey, look, we hear you, maybe this is a better alternative solution, or as you suggest, maybe it's just better to have two.
Right. And in our setting, in a public access setting, of course, folks can't annotate their documents. They're not going in with a personal password and able to go back and revisit what they've done. So every session is a brand new slate. So all those great features, around foldering and history and annotation, in a public library, we always look at it and say, well, that's really nice, but it's nothing that we're able to take advantage of in our setting.
Yeah.
But that's all right. People in our setting just email the results to themselves, and then they can annotate away, in their offices and sort of a manual, use, MS Word or something to do that.
I'm excited to hear what you learn next week. I'm still on the fence. I got a quote. It's more than what I'm currently paying.
Oh, well, there's a surprise. Imagine.
Man, I was hoping, it'd be a little bit, but
keep coming into the law library.
Yeah, I know. I dropped the ALRs, which are one of my favorites, but I just wasn't using them as often. When you want one, you really want it. But.
Well, I mean, that's just it. That's a classic example of you don't end up needing it all that often, but when it addresses your issue, there's hardly anything better. It's just such a perfect kind of resource. Yeah, which is why I just leave it to your law libraries to carry that for you. You can focus on something else.
Embaglement.
Yeah.
Just drop that.
Embaglement. Well, one of the reasons I thought of that, Mike, wasn't so much because of my liberal arts background. It's that many years ago, I heard, my husband and I heard a news story about people boating while intoxicated. And if convicted, they could lose the story said boating privileges for a year, but we thought they said voting privileges. And I thought, well, why, if you vote drunk, do you lose your right to vote? That makes no sense. And then ever since then, I thought V's and B's often get confused.
That was for me one of my most interesting legal research questions of the week, just because I heard that as I was dozing off. I heard it as embaglement, obscure. I'm like, this person's making it up. I can't find it. That's because I had no idea. Same issue. Didn't know how to spell it.
But I think we could maybe try to get embaglement introduced into Webster's dictionary. Let's come up with a definition for it, and
Yeah, that's right.
has to
Change the
involve
name and
bagels
content
in
to it.
some form. Yeah.
Here's Raymond Deary. The other thing I caught dozing off
Oh,
was
right.
the talking
Yeah.
heads on TV was this idea that the special master and the Trump case involving the documents was that he was a deliberative, maybe slower than usual judge. And well, it's a perfect case of taking a look at the litigation analytics. So I jumped in and just kind of see that. I suspect that's anecdotal. I think the phrase they used actually was that he has a reputation for being more deliberative than most. And so they were surprised to see he was acting so quickly. But one of the things that the litigation analytics tools have are these time to rule and time to outcome. So you can see how the judge compares against the district median, not the average, but the median. And here you can see the right on par, I should say, maybe on some of the motions a little extra, but on some either on par or well below. So the data doesn't actually suggest that there's any difference, which is why we have data rather than just anecdotes to make those kinds of determinations.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, someone can be deliberative and maybe careful in how they issue their documents. And it might give the impression that they're slow because they're careful and explain things well, for instance. But the analytics will show whether that's true. And it looks like he isn't particularly slow. And like you said, maybe a little quicker than the median in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Trump's attorneys use data analytics when they were deciding. I mean, I would bet the Department of Justice did. Wouldn't you use some analytics?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I'm sure Westlaw could tell us, but I'm sure they won't.
I usually think of these tools as great for setting client expectations, and I'm not sure how a litigator uses these to make, a decision, because it's not telling us what we should do. It's not telling us what is likely to happen. It's only telling us what has happened.
Right.
So I think in those cases, it's often great for a litigator to say, hey, yes, let's file this motion. Unlikely that we're going to win, and especially in this case because the judge grants these less than the district median, right? So you can say, but I think we have a good argument. Let's make it, but just so you're aware, so you can really use it to set client expectations, which I think it's a valuable tool for. Also, for the team, it's still not predictive. It's not prescriptive. It's telling you what happened, but still, it's a good level setting exercise, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Plus it's cool. I mean,
it's fun.
Eye candy for sure.
Yeah. That's right. Eye candy for nerds right there.
That's right.
And those analytics also, as you mentioned, will tell how often a judge rules, in favor of, the prosecution or the defense or, plaintiff or whatever, right? It'll say, well, in this, it breaks it down by defendant and plaintiff. Yeah.
I don't believe there are some litigation analytical tools that'll tell you who won, which is always a tricky piece, right? It's like what's a win for a defense attorney? Sometimes we're looking at things like jury verdict summaries or in settlement summaries. We're just looking for a result that is greater than $0 to determine an outcome, but that's a win for the defense, really, just because it was a low amount and the defending attorneys did their job by because it's got the business litigation and the business is still around, so there's a win. It's always a challenge.
I think maybe that's a topic for another day, Mike, is that approach to research that asks the question, like, find me cases where where the defendant won. Well, I say, well, that's not usually how people do legal research.
Yeah.
But it is kind of. I mean, folks are pretty interested in these analytics to try to get a general sense.
You can see how the outcome panel here settled the dispositive motion verdict. So that's how at least Westlaw breaks it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And then you get the pie chart kind of thing. Yeah.
All right. I have to go do my day job.
Yeah, me too. Suppose I should. Great
It's been
talking,
great fun
Mike.
again. Yeah. So
Yep.
so happy to have you back. We'll talk next week. If folks have an idea for what they'd like to have, you can play Stump the Chump. Send us your challenging research question or your most interesting legal research question of the week. You can send it to my email at mike@graypaperlegal.com. That's Gray with an A, Mike@graypaperlegal.com. And we'll see you next week.
Bye. Have a good
Bye.
weekend.